Gentlemen, we want to say welcome to Focus on Liberia. Tonight, our discussions is on, we have two fine Liberians or Liberian Americans who won elected positions in the United States. We have Mayor Wilmot Collins of Helena, Montana, and also Mr. Wynfred Russell of Brooklyn Park, that's in Minnesota. Okay, so we're going to discuss the state of their offices since they got elected. And we're also going to talk about Liberians on DED. I understand that they are making some efforts. So we're going to talk about that and a little more. So with me is my co-host, Mrs. Danielle Knuckles Kusha, who's going to take it away from me and introduce our guest. Danielle is on.
Thank you, Dennis, and good evening or good day, depending on what part of the world you're in. Thank you for joining us here on Focus on Liberia. We're here every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And again, thank you for spending your Sunday with us. As Dennis said, today we have Mayor Wilmot Collins, and to tell you a little bit about him, he was born and raised and partly educated in Liberia. He graduated from Carroll High School in Nimba County. In 1980, he later went to Ricks Institute Junior College. There, he obtained an Associates of Arts degree in 1982. Upon graduating from Ricks, he entered the University of Liberia and graduated with the class of '87 with a degree in political science and sociology. While at the University of Liberia, he also attended and graduated from the Liberian Foreign Service Institute. Upon graduating from LU, he began teaching at the SOS Children's Village from 1988 until 1990 when the war hit Monrovia. He and his wife fled Liberia and entered the United States via Ghana. He joined the U.S. military and retired on June 1st, 2018 after 22 years of service. While in the military, he obtained a master's in human resources management, and later worked as an adjunct instructor at the University of Montana and as administrative officer for the VA hospital in Montana, and also as a child protection specialist for the state of Montana Department of Health and Human Services. On January 2nd, 2018, he was sworn in as Helena, Montana's first African-American mayor since Montana became a state. We also have, Mayor Collins, thanks for joining us and welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And thanks for inviting me.
Yes. We also have with us Wynfred Russell, who is not a stranger to us here on Focus on Liberia. We spoke with him just before his election last year. And just to jog your memory, Wynfred created and led the Healthy Living Hub, a project addressing health disparities among low wealth communities in Brooklyn Park. He has dedicated his life to advocating for disenfranchised communities and advancing equity. His work also extends beyond Minnesota. When the Ebola crisis broke out in West Africa, Wynfred used his background in public health and infectious disease policy to manage an Ebola response team in southeastern Liberia. And as we said, he was recently elected to a seat on the Brooklyn Park City Council. So again, welcome back, Councilman Russell.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with your audience today and your audience, of course. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And to all viewers across the globe, we want to say welcome on Focus on Liberia. Here we do our best to educate, to promote, and elevate all things Liberia. And I want to say again, gentlemen, welcome to Focus on Liberia. We are so glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Danielle, you can go ahead.
So once again, just congratulations to both of you. Winning an elected position here in the U.S. is a great deal. So congratulations. And Councilman Russell, can you please tell us what it feels like holding that office, what it feels like to win?
Well, it feels great. I think it is a testament to how we should go about things. I mean, if it's something that you feel strongly about, you should hang in there, don't give up, and keep on trying, as your theme music says, for example. So we just we hung in there, and we took a different approach this time, and brought in a good number of people, including Mayor Collins, who's on the call here tonight, who came down to Minneapolis and then went on to Brooklyn Park to help us. We built this broad coalition. And so I think, it's a great thing. It's a great thing that our voices are now being heard, and we have a seat at the table.
And Mayor Collins, how did it feel for you to win? And what is it like holding an elected office here in the U.S.?
It feels great. For me, it tells me that my community sees something in me that I can bring to the table. And when I got elected, it was a little overwhelming because it was a hard-fought election. But knowing that I had a community that was rooting for me, a community that had faith in me, and I felt great. It was an honor, and it is an honor to be able to serve the people of Helena. And I'm looking forward to the next 3 years.
Right, and Helena, Montana. How you got over there?
Well, part of the story goes like this. My wife was an African exchange student here. When she was in Liberia, she came to Helena and went to high school here. And when we fled, she thought about nowhere else, but she wanted to come back to Montana because she had roots here. And that's how we started the ball. We contacted her host family, and her host family were instrumental in getting the ball rolling. They got her a scholarship from the local college here to do nursing. And that's how she came. And then I had to go through the refugee process, and I was able to join them a few years later.
Wow.
That's interesting. So describe for us, where is just Montana, Helena? I was looking at the statistics, and it looked like the white population is like 90, black is like 0.6. So just describe describe.
Well, we border, Montana borders the Dakotas, we border Canada up north, and we also border Wyoming. And yes, the demographics is pretty, we're looking at the demographics here is 92% Caucasian, 5% Native Americans, and 3% others. And we happen to fall within that others, So we're so little that we're not a percentage yet. Not so little, but so few.
Mayor Collins, can you tell us what prepared you for the job?
The education you receive, your upbringing, and your environment, all those things prepare you. Because I went to the University of Liberia and I did political science, and we started politics at the University of Liberia. And so getting out there, interacting with people was not new. It's just that I had to get to know a new set of people. But I think my preparation started back in Liberia. Like my mom said, and she's always said, you have 2 ears to hear, listen more and talk less. And so we started that in Liberia. And then when I came to America, or to the US, and to Montana, it took a while to get to know my environment. But after I got to know my environment and my community got to know me, we came to a conclusion that it was time for me to get involved. It was time for me to get involved in local politics. And that's when I decided to get involved because the community saw it in me. I saw it in myself. My family saw it, and we started the ball rolling.
And Councilman Russell, I know you spoke about this a bit last time when you were on, but can you just remind us, I guess, how you got to this point? I think sometimes people see the finished product and they hear your name now as a winner, someone who has won an election, but can you please tell our viewers exactly what your process was to get to this point?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think I'm most famous for, I guess, is the fact that I ran for this very seat 6 years ago, and I lost by 5 votes. And I took a 6 years hiatus. I went overseas and I did some work, and then I came back this time and ran against the same gentleman who defeated me the last time, and I was able to get over the hump. But I'm all about service. I'm passionate about service. I'm passionate about improving the lives of people and giving back to the community. I took that from my mother. My mother was a high school teacher, as a teacher back in Liberia, and she I spent all her time in the school teaching elementary school and all the way up to high school. My father too is very big in his community and serving in his church, in his local fraternity. He had a lot of things going for him. And growing up too, I grew up in Nimba, when I went to high school, and I was I took on a life of service even from an early age, and seeing what my parents were doing. And I started working with different environmental groups, the tree planting groups, involved in a lot of service-oriented work. And so when I came to the States and saw all the opportunities here, it just sort of became a natural thing for me. But it has not been easy, obviously. We had to pound the pavement. We had to work, very hard to get to where we are. I think the key is resiliency, and not, and perseverance, and not, giving up, and just sticking to it and sticking to what you believe is true. And for me, service and community service.
Councilman Cullen or Councilman Russell, can you check your audio a little bit? It's not too audible.
Okay. I think that's the same thing we had the last time. So I was using my headphones. So okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, that does sound better.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So as I was saying, so
good.
Does it sound better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So so as I was saying, for me, service comes naturally, but it does require a lot of work, a lot of hard work, and so even though I learned from my mother and father, and from growing up on the mission back in Liberia, I've been involved in a number of service-oriented projects. And coming to America, where you have a lot of opportunities, I've been able to leverage my training and my experience in organizing and community activity and all of that back home, and to be able to do some good things here. But I didn't get to where I'm at all by myself. I would credit my parents, but also a large number of people who stepped forward and appreciated my vision for trying to improve the lives of people, and they have helped me along the way. So I've been blessed with having good parents who believe in service, and surrounded myself with a lot of good-hearted people too, who would help me along the way, and that's why I'm where I'm at today.
And Councilman, when someone think of a Brooklyn Park, you think that they are Liberians or Africans that help you, for you to win. But the demographic is not, it does not favor a lot of African Americans or Black people.
Well, that's partly true. I mean, even though demographic, we're a whole lot more diverse than Montana, than Helena. But we had to build a broad-based coalition, you're right? Multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multi-racial group that came together. We all, have similar aspirations, and that is to try to improve the lives of marginalized people in the community. But we didn't win on the backs of just one group of people, just African immigrants, Liberian immigrants. We won on the backs of, wide diversity of people from a cross-section of the community. Even though Brooklyn Park does have the largest concentration of Liberians outside of Liberia, there's nowhere else where you have Liberians concentrated in one geographic space, other than Brooklyn Park. So we were able to leverage that numerical strength as well. But Liberians constitute about 12 to 15% of Brooklyn Park's population, and Brooklyn Park has a population of about 85,000 people. So we are a pretty significant chunk of the community, not only numerically but economically. We support that area. So we are pretty big base. We have a pretty big base there. However, we had to rely on the goodwill and the resources of other community groups because this seat is not a Liberian seat. I'm not a Liberian council member, a council member representing the interests of all of the people who live in Brooklyn Park. And we have a pretty diverse city. Brooklyn Park is one of the most diverse cities in the state of Minnesota. It's the sixth largest city in the state. Minnesota has about 5.6 million people, and Brooklyn Park is the sixth largest city.
Mayor Collins, can you tell us what your first 100 days as mayor was like? What maybe goals you may have set?
Well, my first 100 days was what I consider a learning period because nobody goes to be mayor. I had to learn how to conduct a meeting. I had to learn how to, I had to meet with the city officials. And so, but I ran on three things. When I was running for mayor, I ran on fully funding the providers of essential services. And that is the police, firefighters, EMTs. I ran on providing opportunities for affordable housing and finally curbing teenage and veterans homelessness. And so when I got in, the first thing I had to do was get my platform in order. And in doing that, we had an election coming, a midterm election coming up, and I wanted my safety levy on the ballot. So we had to start working immediately because that was something that had failed for the last 22 years. And I wanted to work towards passing that. I took on that was a huge project. And so we interacted with the community, and for the first time in 22 years, it passed within my first 5 months. And that was a huge accomplishment for the community, for the citizens of the community, because we were able to fund the firefighters were able to fund police and EMTs. And so basically my first, I'll say my first 5 months or my first 100 days were getting to know my community, getting to know the city, getting to know the issues of the city, and working on those issues, and being able to pass my first platform, which was for fully funding the providers of essential services.
And interesting that was your platform. You know, we hear that oftentimes in Africa, people like the police are kind of left out and forgotten about. Sometimes they don't get paid regularly, or they don't get paid what they're supposed to. Can you just tell our viewers exactly why you thought making sure those people were paid and paid appropriately was so important to you?
Well, you know, everybody wants a safe community. And in order to have a safe community, you have to have a well-funded public servant. You have to have a well-funded, you have to fund the various entities. And I noticed that with the firefighters, their calls were being delayed. And when I met with the firefighters, sometimes their calls were being delayed for up to almost 20, 30 minutes. And that is a no-go for a fire. Because if you have an emergency and you call that 911 number asking for assistance, you expect that fire service to be there within 5 minutes. But when they're there because they're short-staffed and they don't have the equipment, that it creates an unsafe community. And with the police not having things they need to conduct business, their daily business, it creates an unsafe community. And if you're creating a community where the people of Helena must be able to live and enjoy their livelihood, you must create a safe environment. And I thought with firefighters being slow, with police not having what they needed to have, that was an issue I needed to tackle. If I wanted to care for this community the way it should be cared for, it should be a priority. That's why I decided to address those issues.
Thank you. Councilman Russell, can you please remind us exactly what a councilman does and like what your job is as a councilman? Because I know that's not a position that is common or may not be there at all in Africa.
Well, thank you. In some parts of Africa, I mean, you do have similar structures, similar system. And from what I understand and my reading is that we have similar structure and system in Liberia. However, the implementation of it is completely different. It's something completely different. So it's sad that we don't follow books or have maybe shown books out. But what the city council does, the city council in Brooklyn Park, for example, is a 7-member city council. We have what is called a weak mayoral system. And that means that we have a city manager who is the, so think about it as a company where you have a CEO. So the city manager would be the CEO of the company, so for the city, that's what the city manager does. The mayor would be the equivalent if we're using the a company model like in America, in the West. the mayor will be the equivalent of the chair of the board of directors. So the city council is sort of like the board that, you know, the city. So the actual day-to-day operations of the city is done by the city council, by the city manager, assistant city manager, and other department heads. So those people report the police chief, the deputy police chief, fire chief, all of the heads of all these, the parks and rec head, they all report to the city manager. The city manager reports to the city council. So we oversee the entire operation, the entire running of the city. So I'm just one of the, you know, say one of the persons on the board of directors, you know, look at it that way. So we have fiduciary responsibility. We are, you know, accountable to the voters, and we all are voted. The city managers and the department heads are not voted. You know, the people hold us accountable, and then we hold them accountable to run the city appropriately. So the budget, we approve the budget. We audit. We audit them, you know, and all of that. So those are like some of the things that we do as city council. So city council members. Each city council member has a vote. So the mayor, even though he's the mayor, his vote is no more powerful, no more relevant than my one vote. So each person has a vote. So you have to come to the city council, bring your position forward, or if the mayor has a particular position he would like to take on a particular issue, he will have to convince the other 6 city council members in order for that policy or whatever that position he's pushing to go through. So we are all treated fairly, equally. You know, no one is more powerful than the other person. So even though he's the mayor, but he's no powerful, or he cannot do, you know, he doesn't have any more power necessarily than we do. So in essence, that's how it is, and it's unfortunate that we don't have such accountability or such structure in Liberia, where all of us are from. You know, I certainly would like to see some, you know, a system like that set up in Liberia where people can hold our leaders, our city officials, local government officials, and heads of municipalities to hold them accountable. But in order to do that, they will have to be elected, as opposed to being appointed. As you know, here, you know, all of the positions, you know, for city council, whether you operate within the weak mayoral system or the strong mayoral system, like many of the big cities, like for example, Minneapolis, the largest city in Minnesota, the city mayor is a full-time position, and he runs you know, the city with city council there. But the smaller cities are usually a different system. So you have New York, Washington, D.C. I mean, the big cities, they'll run a little differently than smaller cities. But at the end of the day, they still have the same sort of structure, and they all are held accountable by the voters.
All right. If you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. Our topic is the state of the office. This is the time where presidents are talking about the state of the union or the state of the nation. So we are talking about the state of the office of the city council and also the mayor. And if you are just joining us, please welcome, share the video, be a part of the discussion. And before Mayor Collins, you know, glad Councilman Russell talk about that structure. So let's look at the city government as a major. What is that, you know, relationship to the county government and the overall state government? How do they, and I was surprised, you know, I learned later on that Helena is actually the capital city of Montana. So that's a big job. So
Well,
tell me how all these functions relate and how you cooperate on stuff like that.
you know, we work closely together because it's the capital city, we have to work with the state government and the county government. And Councilman Russell was pretty accurate in describing our duties. But here in Helena, the little difference here is that we have a 5-man, what he considered a board of directors, which is accurate. And I chair the board. And but we have to work closely with, by virtue of the fact that Helena is the capital city, it's a little different because even though we say it's part-time, but sometimes I think it's because of our location where we are, it's busier than most others because we have to work with the state governments, we have to work with the county government, and we are being held accountable by our constituents. So it's like Councilman Russell said, you know, I too sincerely wish that we could, Liberia could emulate some of these practices because it will only help the country. But before they even get there, there's something I've always mentioned. Our mindset, or the Liberian mindset, will have to be totally refurbished, totally changed. Because right now, when I watch and see what goes on, it's scary. But we are the policymakers. We make the policies. We send the policy down to the city manager, and they implement those policies.
Mayor Collins, can you, I guess, just explain a little bit more what your role is as mayor, what your responsibilities are, whether that's budget or I'm not sure how different Helena is from Brooklyn Park.
It's in the general sense, it's not. But if you go on on a more intricate scale, you're looking at, like I said, we have a 5-person council. Okay. We have commissioners. We have 4 commissioners and 1 mayor, and the mayor chairs the council. And so, in terms of like what Councilman Russell said was accurate. If there's a policy needs to be made, and it's a policy of that I'm bringing forth, I would have to, in order for that policy to pass, the council, the commission will have to take a vote on that eventually after we go through all the explanation of what the policy is about. And so it will have to pass. It will pass by 3-2 votes, and most times, you know, the mayor will have to break a tie. Because I remember the first tie break I had to do. It was tough because both the issue was well balanced, but I had to break that tie vote, and I had to go on one way or the other. And so, but whatever we do, we remember that we're doing it in the interest of this community. We're doing it in the interest of the citizens of this community. Self-service it's nowhere to be found. You're not about self-service. You're about the community service. So anyway, and that's what we do, you know. So, but on the bigger level, you know, like I said, we have to work with, like, parts of our community, you know, because we're in the capital city. Some of the road work that should be done is done by the state. some of the road work that should be done is done by, parts of it's done by the county. Because the city is so divided like that, because it's not only the city of Helena, the constituents of Helena that are using those areas. Everybody. We're 31,000 people, but when we include the county, there's no county without the city. We're looking at almost 61,000 people because of the county. And so we work closely together for all.
Councilman Russell, Mayor Collins explained what his platform was. Can you remind our viewers what your platform was and exactly how you've been, exactly how you've tried to implement what you promised?
Yeah, thank you. I think it sounds pretty similar, listening to Mayor Collins there, with some of the things that he is fighting for. So I'm pushing for, I'm interested in affordable housing, and what we're going to do with that, try to see how best we can increase the affordable housing stock in Brooklyn Park, or give some developers incentives to build more affordable housing. And by affordable housing, what we mean is that the federal guidelines is if you are spending more than 30% of your income on housing, then it's not affordable. Okay, so we want to be sure that people are not, that they have enough money left after they've paid their rent or paid their mortgage. They have enough money left over to buy food, to buy gas, to repair their cars, and to do other things, to go to the movies, go to a baseball a game or so. So we want to be sure that you have extra money to do all of those things that will improve the quality of life of people. I'm also interested in parks and trails. So on my platform, I talked about how we can, in Brooklyn Park, we have pretty close to about 45 parks within the city. So we want to be, want to be sure that those parks are also connected to regional parks, part of the region, which also includes the county. I mean, Brooklyn Park is located in the largest, most populous county within the state. And that county also is home to Minneapolis, the largest city in the state. It's called Hennepin County. So we have regional parks, we have state parks, and we have, city parks. So I'm interested in trying to ensure that we have enough trails, parks and trails there for people to get out and bike and walk and stroll, and they can utilize, the parks for health and the entire city. Small business development. We are a very diverse city. Like I said earlier, the population at about 85,000 people. We have about 57% of the population is of people of color. So a mix of Asian, African Americans, Latinos, other African immigrants. We have a pretty diverse mix of people. We have some big companies there, and so a lot of the incentives have been going to big companies. So we have like Tesla in Brooklyn Park, Tesla Motors. We have Olympus. We have Takata, pharmaceutical company. We have some big companies, and we tend to give tax breaks or what we call tax increment financing to these big companies. But not the small companies. So in a lot of the minority-owned businesses don't get those sort of big, tax breaks like Target and other big companies, get. So part of what I'm interested in is seeing how best we can grow and incentivize the creation of small businesses giving them some assistance, some financial assistance, some financial breaks, some tax breaks. I'm interested in developing a multimodal transportation system. We have light rail coming through. How are we getting our people to work and getting them access to school and to other services, to medical services and all of that, in using light rail and using other transportation services. And of course, my support for the police and the fire department to ensure that we are kept safe. Citizens are kept safe. That also helps to enhance our quality of life. So those are some of the issues that I am interested in, and the way I'm going to get those things through is by working with the coalition that I have built. I'm having my first town hall meeting on the 21st of February, so citizens can come together, because the policy flow, the way the policy tend to flow in the city is that it comes from the citizens. It's organically driven by citizens, and then we can take it up from there and then try to, to pass an ordinance or pass to put a policy through, get staff to work on the policy through. So those are some of the things that I'm interested in doing, working with our council folks to get those things through.
Thank you, Councilman. And I'm glad none of you promised to build any wall, right?
No.
There's a question here on Facebook from J. Rudolph Kamara. And I think you guys should expect this was coming. How can you help Liberia with your experience?
Well, who do you want to go first?
Go for it.
Well, Liberia needs to first want to have the help. It's not that we don't have all the answers, but Liberia can be served by wanting to be helped. And I've heard so many times where we have had experts from here going to Liberia, and there is a us versus them attitude that has to stop. Because first, we got our bearings from Liberia. This is not us versus them attitude. And if that's the attitude, there's no way nobody can really help the us versus them. They will have to open their arms and accept the assistance. Can they? I don't know. But if they're willing, believe me, I'm willing.
And how? If today they're willing, how will you help?
If they're willing, they have to show it. Okay, you can't just say I'm willing and I can go to Liberia today. In fact, I've gone around to the various Liberian communities in this country, and I've seen how meetings have been conducted. The first thing is we may need to change our mindset here in America, because when I watch some of the meetings that are being held, it's like, wow, we're fighting each other here. We're not meeting. And so what I can do, there's so many things we hear, what we've gained from this country, we can help Liberia with. But first, we have to assist them in changing that mindset. That is very important. The government, you know as well as I know, Liberians are smart people. But how do we change the mindset that the government should not be the largest employer? The government should not be there for self-aggrandizement. The government should not be there, is not there for self-enrichment. That's not the idea of the government. The government is there for the people. Who put the government in? The government is accountable to the people. But what I've seen is totally the opposite. We have a system in Liberia, the three branches of government are equal branches of government. Is that what's happening in Liberia? That's why when I say we have to change the mindset, that's what I'm talking about. People will have to know why they're there. And until they know why they're there, until they're educated about the systems of government, we're going to remain lost. So if they're willing for some of us who are going through the experiences now to get back there and educate our fellow Liberians on the various systems of government and how they work, I'll be more than happy to get out there and do that. I'll be overjoyed to do that. But they have to want to accept the assistance, because I know when people have gone there, is that us versus them mentality. We have to erase that ASAP.
Councilman?
Well, yeah,
How can you help?
We get up in so many ways, but, as Mayor Collins just said, which is spot on, we have to be willing to, to change and accept change. And as Mayor Collins also said, which is, true, Mayor Michael Elliott from Brooklyn Center in Minnesota, Mayor Collins, and I, all of us were born and grew up in Liberia.
Yes.
We didn't learn what we are trying to implement. Some of the strategies, of course, Mayor Elliott is a little younger. He came here a little younger, but he was born and, grew up and been around and lived in Liberia. So a lot of these things, we learn, and, and our whole upbringing and all of that is rooted in Liberia, so this is not rocket science, but you have to be willing to want to learn and want to change and do things differently. I've gone back there too. I've tried to help. Even when Mayor Bro was there, I've written, policy documents on governance. And again, all three of us, Mayor Collins, Mayor Elliott, and I, we didn't just come to these positions overnight. I've been on the Planning Commission. I've been on the Human Rights Commission. I've, working in the city, trying to understand the inner workings of the city, how the city, city government, operates. And I think one of the things, with all due respect, some of the folks that we put in those positions in Liberia, they have no experience, no background. They have no understanding of the system or how those positions even work, are supposed to work. So it's very easy to say, okay, we'll give you one fire truck, or we'll give you one police car, we'll give you one, use this. That's very simple. That's easy, but that's not what is going to change the system. That's not what's going to change things. And like the mayor said, we need a change in mindset. All of that. So this stuff. It's very layered and complicated, but it shouldn't be, that complicated. So how I can help by, offering my expertise, and I have, and I continue to people, who would like to receive it and like to, to want to see change happening. I'm not just interested in, oh, can you help? And I have done that. The record was showed. During the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf administration, I've been head of, one of the leads in, because of my relationship in the city, we've established sister city relationship. For example, Brooklyn Park has a sister city relationship with Kakata. Brooklyn Center, where Michael Elliott has a sister city relationship with Wanjima. I've been part of one of the leads, part of efforts where we took fire truck to Kakata, took fire trucks to Monrovia, when the police director Massacre was there. We helped to arrange over 1,000 uniform, rain gear for the police department. A lot of things, but that's the easy part. That stuff is not sustainable.
Right.
how do we, providing this, how are we generating income to run the city? I just talk about Brooklyn Park, a small little city like Brooklyn Park, with about 45 different parks. We have no park in Monrovia, in the largest city. We generate over $82 million just from services, from parks and other services that we provide in the city. That income is used to hire people, to keep people, on job. We are not just about, keeping the city clean. The city is about, the services cuts across. We're providing services to youth. We're creating jobs. We are making sure that the people are, are safe. The police, we have adequate, supplies at the, supplies at the city, the police department to keep, the city safe. So our work is not just narrowly focused on the garbage in the street or getting. I mean, it cuts across. So people have to be willing and ready to change.
Yes,
that's. I think you can nail it enough. There's another question here on Facebook, and you kind of preempted it. T. Wetty Thompson is talking about that same sister relationship. He said there was a lot of U.S. cities that adopted Liberian cities as twin cities. Those American cities provided help in the form of sanitary equipment and materials. Since we have our brothers working as decision makers in U.S. city government, should we expect the restoration of twin cities arrangement? And you are saying that's happening, but that's the easy part.
But you know something? Let's be real. When you say a relationship, that relationship should be reciprocal.
Yeah.
We've been having relationships that have been one-sided. When you say sister cities relationship, what do you think it means? No, that question is a serious question to you, Ms. Ja. Mm-hmm. And you can refer that back to the questioners. When we say relationship, it's a two-way street. But I've come to realize this relationship is a one-way street when it comes to Liberia. Mm. They want. But now what we tend to miss is that every Liberian has Liberia at heart, all right? But we have all these organizations that are pumping into Liberia. And I always say, for me, let's quit this pumping into Liberia and work with the government. I always say, if we're building schools, if we're sending books, if we're paving roads, what's the government doing?
Exactly.
We need to work in collaboration with the government. And I say, because you know as well as I know, corruption is at its peak in Liberia. And if we're doing all those things that the government should do, what are we doing? We're enhancing corruption.
I never got to think about that.
But yeah, exactly. We should be able to work with the government. If I am providing 10 cents and the thing is 20 cents, government, put 10 cents in. Let the people from America put 10 cents, you put 10 cents, let's build this. That's ownership. We don't do that. Everybody's hand out. At what point are we working together? We need to hold the government accountable to work with us who want to work to help Liberia. That's what we need to do. Our relationship is a two-way street. And I know I've heard people say, no, our poor struggling people. Our people in Liberia are struggling because of one reason, our government. And I'm not only referring to present, past, future, whatever it is. We need to hold our various governments accountable. And in order to do that, we on this side need to start doing that also. If I'm going to give you 10, if I'm to build a basketball court and that basketball court is $200, if I'm putting 50, I would tell you straight, I'll put $50 in, you put 150, or I'll put 150 and you put 50, in order for you to have some ownership.
Yeah.
But that's not happening. All we're doing is
who's in Liberia. Someone has an experience, who has experience working in Liberia, Pastor Timothy Bear. If you notice on Facebook, he's helping to build schools and do all sort of. Here's what he's saying. Behavioral change is very key in developing Liberia. We need to change our ways of doing things. We do things right in other countries, but fail to do the same in Liberia. Very sad. People go against you if you do the right thing. That's Timothy who's living it.
He is 100% right. Tell him he's right. That's what the Councilman Russell and myself said. The mindset has to change. We have to start from here.
Councilman Russell earlier alluded to sanitation. You know, a lot of us have seen the pictures on Facebook, you know, with trash piled high in some of Liberia's major cities. Can you guys just touch on how sanitation is dealt with in your cities, and I guess the part you play in making sure that the city is kept clean?
Well, you know, we the city provides the equipment. In fact, I'll rephrase that. The people of the community, the people of the city of Helena provide the tax dollars to where we provide the equipment, and we have a department. We don't have the mayor or the council walking on the street, beating people to get off the street, to clean the streets. We have a streets department. They will take care of that. And so, but you see, there's a clear demarcation. A government will work if those lines are drawn. And we have those lines drawn here in the US. And in order for us to translate that to Liberia, we have to understand governance. And I think that's where we're lacking, because if you ask any Liberian in Monrovia or Painesville or elsewhere, what should the mayor be doing? The first thing they will tell you, the mayor should clean our streets. Come on, that's a minute part of the job of the council. It's such a small part, but that's a major part there. So it's clear that we have work ahead of us if we want to assist. It's so much more than just cleaning the streets, Ms. Knuckles.
And Councilman Russell, sanitation is handled about the same way in your city as well?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, if without due respect to all of the folks, like Mayor Collins said, and I'm going to, reiterate that, we clearly don't have all the answers. We don't know everything. It's nothing about that. But what we do have, I think, working for us that we'd like to see translated over there is a system. It's a system that works, that people respect. People can respect the system and let the system work. In Brooklyn Park as well, and I can submit that just about every city you go to, Lawrenceville, Loganville, any city you go to, the garbage collection is a very, it's an important part of it, but it's a very minute, it's a very small part of, what city operation. But it seemed like the be all and then all thing in Liberia, because we don't have, proper structures in place and a system in place. So, but to answer the question more directly, I mean, what we do in our case, the garbage collection and including recyclables and all of that, they're outsourced. We issue our contracts, and people. I mean, the city itself doesn't. We don't have we don't collect garbage ourselves, but it's subcontracted out to third-party vendors, and they bid for it and they get the contract. And they do that. I mean, we supervise like I said earlier, how those contracts are awarded and, and all of that. But that's, the extent of it. But I think one of the key, and Mayor Collins, talked about a little bit, and that is I think one of the things we got to go back to basics. The mindset change and all. I mean, it's just so many. It's just multifaceted problem. So where do we start? Because at the core too is we don't have a tax base in Liberia, in the city. Painesville has a sister city relationship with Painesville, Minnesota. Kakata has a sister city relationship with Kakata. Kakata has a sister city relationship with Brooklyn Park, Vonjimai with Brooklyn Center. Okay, but the sister city relationship, these things are set up. It's not intended to be. It's not supposed to be a one way. Y'all give me what all your Houston, y'all get your senator. No, that's not how a sister city relationship is supposed to work. It's a two-way exchange of ideas, resources, cultural, exchange. I mean, all of this sort of stuff. So we have to go back to the fundamentals. Those things are on the books in Liberia, but they're not being implemented. We have to go back to the fundamental. There's no tax base. So how will you even clean the streets? There's no tax base. How are you raising money to put in place all of these different structures when everything is being, so we have a structural problem. When everything is being handled from what the Ministry of Foreign Internal Affairs and the government is your government ministers are poking into everything you're doing and doing. I mean, so we have a structural problem first.
You keep saying tax base. What does that mean?
Well, you need money to run the city, money to run the services that the city provide. And it's not just by I mean. The tax base, the tax system will have to be set up, differently in a place like Liberia, where you don't have, a huge, you don't have a sophisticated, tax system, set up. But I know it's not. It's done in other parts of Africa, because I've visited Windhoek in Namibia, and they have a pretty good system, a pretty good structure. Go to Cape Town, so you don't even have to come to America. You can look right there in Africa and get examples from how cities are being effectively and efficiently run. But you need resources to run these cities, and the resources come from. And now every city here in the U.S. is a little different. Like in Brooklyn Park, but they all operate pretty much the same. It's just some little, minor differences between them, because some cities operate the schools. My city doesn't operate schools, but Minneapolis, for example, they control the school, like the school system and all of that. So it's not. So we have a structural problem too that we have to deal with. So we need to raise money to run these programs. So I mean, but we can do it too in some simplistic fashion. I just told you, for example, we raise about $82 million annually just from services that we provide. We're renting out the parks, to take pictures. To have weddings, to have barbecue and all these different things. We have a golf course. We have, event centers. You have tons and tons of weddings. People are paying, $2,500 to rent our community activity center. That money coming into the city coffers. You park your car illegally. You're giving a $30 ticket. Those are resources that come into the city to help to run the city. That's how I run.
On the ticket. But here's one question that's always on my mind. As I think about Liberia and what you do here, is there no opportunity for you for corruption? Everything is so. I mean, besides you being a good person, is there no opportunity for you to be corrupt? Or are there so many guys of why are you not taking the money
Mr. Jad, there's no foolproof perfect system anyway. There's no foolproof system anywhere. Liberians are no different from most Americans. Okay, but the fundamental difference here is the lack of impunity and the presence of deterrence. Because you can do whatever you want to do, but just so you know, they're going to find you out. When they find you out, you can be Jesus' son. You're going to be held accountable and you're going to be dealt with. So it's not that you don't have an opportunity to be to be corrupt, but do some. I mean, you have a pretty sound system, but some people can still try to bypass the system. But the difference is that you're not going to get away with it. Right. There's no way you're going to get away with it. I mean, we all are here. You were saying what even happening with at the national level, right, with Trump and all of that. Can you imagine anywhere in Africa, certainly in Liberia, where the Speaker of the House would tell the president, you can't come into the chambers, into the House chamber to give a state of the nation, a state of the union address because of policy differences. No, so there's you can be corrupt, you can do whatever you want to do, but just so you know, you will be held accountable and you will be dealt with accordingly. And that's what we don't have back in Liberia or in Africa.
Mayor Collins?
I just got to say that transparency is key. For us, every meeting we hold, every meeting that is held in our chambers is televised and open to the public. Everything we do is open to the public. My office, I tell them, it's open to the public. They can come in whenever they want. It's a public office. So, and that is a deterrence. And like Councilman Russell said, you will be held accountable for what you do. So you must look like, I'll tell you, even though this is a crazy example, but we're holding meeting and it's televised, so people at their homes can watch what we're doing. And one day, someone's watching our meeting. They called the office and said, "Tell the councilman to wipe the smirk off his face." It's open. That's how it's open. So you have to maintain yourself at all times. You have to maintain decorum at all times. And someone told me, when you leave your house, when you walk out your door, you don't have one person looking at you, you have the community watching you. You have to be that example for the community, inside and outside. Look, like tomorrow, I'm delivering the State of the City address tomorrow. I'm going to be telling my community the condition of my city. And it's good. It's in good hands. It's going to continue to be good. But yeah, I got a 24-page State of the City address right here.
Wow.
that I'll be delivering tomorrow. So, but yeah, everything is transparent. Transparency is the key.
That's a great point, Mayor Collins. This whole issue of transparency, and just I would just touch on that just a little bit. Look, if our 7-member council, if I go to the city manager or even to the mayor and ask him a question, the mayor will respond to me and copy everybody, all the rest of the folks. Mm-hmm. Everything is in the sunlight. It's in sunlight.
Yeah. Look, in fact, more than the mayor and 2 other council members can never be in a private setting.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm having a party. I can only invite 1 council member. If I have 2, if we have a quorum, it's illegal. I must invite the whole public. If I invite more than 2, I must also invite the public. That's the kind of transparency we're talking about.
If you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are focusing on 2 of our Liberian Americans who have elected position. We are focusing on the state of their offices. And let's change gear a little bit and go on to talk about our DED. We learned that this is about to expire. So Danielle.
Well, Dennis, before we get to that,
all right,
I wanted to mention one comment I saw on Facebook from Wanakula Kula, who says, the people are paid on time. And I think what he's alluding to is the fact that it's less likely for Americans to want to steal government income because they get a regular salary and probably a livable salary. So if both of you could just touch on, because I would think that's a budget issue. You know, you have however many police officers in the city, and it should be set in the budget that, you know, this is how much we have for the year to pay the police officers. So can you just give a little bit of insight as to how budgets are set to make sure that every single employee is paid?
Well, let me just, I'm going to break this down in the simplest of terms. Like I said earlier, in Liberia, the government does everything. Whereas here, when I say the government, I'm talking about the Republic of Liberia government. They're in charge of everything. They disseminate money to the various cities. Cities can become autonomous. But we don't have the system where tax, like what Councilman Russell said, there's no tax system there. Here in America, every home that is bought or every home that is owned is taxed. Businesses are taxed. Depending on the area, employers are taxed. Workers are taxed. Those taxes are given to those various entities, those various communities, and that's how they survive. And that's how they carry on the duties of those areas. But in Liberia, if the government is mad at one person, that area suffers because they will have to give. Now, I hear that they give development funds to senators. Pray tell me why development funds are going to senators versus the leaders of the various communities. Right. Why? So our priorities are so screwed up. They're mixed up because development funds should not be going to various senators who live in Monrovia. They should be going to the various leaders of those areas, of those counties.
The superintendents.
The superintendent. They're supposed to be handling those things. Because the system in Liberia does not work, it's very difficult. People always try to compare the US to Liberia. You can't. Someone told me they got 3 types of men. I heard that thing a couple of days ago. They got what? Go put 3 sets of men and they put Liberian men. And we're everything we do is so different from everybody else. Because that mindset is so, I hate to say screw up, but that's what it is. Mm-hmm. The government should not, and I say it should not be giving money to senators to take development to their counties. They do not know the needs of that particular county. They're in Monrovia. It's just an extra way for corruption. It's another way. Because are the counties getting those funding? No, they're not. Counties relying on people in America. Maryland County relying on Maryland County Association to carry development there. Why should we be taking development to to Liberia? We should be working with the people there.
And that's kind of bring me to the question on how are you now being like the forerunners? How are you working with our local communities here? you alluded to it before that you go to the meeting, there's a lot of fighting. How do you work with our local communities here in the diaspora to help with some of these good stuff that you're saying?
You know, I've been around, and in fact, I think I am going to work with, I know an organization wants me to do some training out there with them. You know, I am open to whatever they want, whatever expertise I have that they can tap into, I'm 100% willing to provide that. But like, it goes back to the fact that, we have to want the change. We have to want to accept whatever expertise we have. But people, Liberians, as well as I know, if you go there, you're stepping on someone's toe. Oh, the man think he know it all now because he this. The man think he know it all now because he that. We are never appreciative of our own.
Samson Gangala is watching the show and he's impressed. He's asking why you, the councilman, you cannot organize something in Liberia and go on the radio so you can impart some of this knowledge or some of these things that we are saying. And first of all, Samson, we want people in Monrovia or Liberia to watch Focus on Liberia. But some of the things that we run into is for our show to be on the radio in Liberia, we have to pay. And we're not in that financial position yet to be able to pay on a monthly basis to have the show. But what are your thoughts, Councilman? How can you impart knowledge, via radio in Liberia to explain some of these things that you are explaining?
I mean, one of the things we can do is to, can participate in a forum like this. I hate to reinvent the wheel. There are a number of these sort of platforms available. I've been on the Costa show. I've been, in the news in Front Page Africa, in the Daily Observer, in TLC Africa. I've written articles. Many people know that I like to write. I haven't done so in a while. So try to utilize whatever medium there's available to try to educate. But I mean, and provide any sort of knowledge, any sort of information to help move things forward. What you all are doing, and I think when you called me to tell me about this, you invite me here, and you told me that Mayor Collins and you were also inviting Mayor Elliott. I thought, wow, this was a brilliant idea, very, very visionary. No one had, called us together and said, because in essence, this is more of an educational type forum, and conversation we're having than political. But, so more of these kinds of things. Bottom line is, I'm available, I'm ready, whenever the opportunity avails itself. To contribute however way I can contribute. I mean, this is something I'm passionate about. I've been doing this for a long time and trying to, many folks know this, when I got to Liberia the last time, I was there 2013, 2014, 2015. I tried to do everything possible, to help. Even the current mayor, I don't know him personally, but many of the folks who know him and know me, some mutual colleagues of both of us contacted me, and I helped to provide a framework for how to move the city forward. I worked with the folks from Painesville when Mayor Gibson was there, and even the new head there in Painesville now, her chief of staff was just in Minnesota and trying to see how best we can help. Again, like I've said, I mean, a lot of what, at least the request to me has been, a lot of it has been about, okay, do you all have some used computers? Do you have a used truck? Those things are important. But for me, I think we need to change the system. We need some structural changes to the system in order for things to work. This municipal government is more than just cleaning the streets. It's about providing jobs. It's about keeping people safe, people healthy, and all of that. So it's a whole host of things that we need to we need to take care of. So until we can take care of those sort of structural problems, I think we're going to be like the hamster in the wheel, and just keep turning. They keep turning and keep turning and keep turning. But I'm available and I'm ready and I'm willing, to help out and to provide whatever insight, I can provide to help to move things forward.
Thank you. Danielle, can we move to DED now?
Yes, we can. So just to switch gears, DED is set to expire in 2 months. Can you guys describe what is at stake and what are you doing to help? Oh, and exactly what is DED? What does it stand for? I think it's a deferred departure. Yeah.
Enforcement departure.
Oh, okay. Deferred enforcement departure.
I see Councilman Rojas on the screen, so.
Deferred is actually, so DED is, DED stands for Deferred Enforced Departure. So it's a derivative of the temporary protected status. Liberians were given back in 1991. So when temporary protected status was created, it was the whole law. I mean, it was created. It started off as a way to help Liberians, because as you all remember, back in 1991, the war was at its peak, and many Liberians made it to the U.S. So in order to get TPS, you have to be in the U.S. to get TPS. You can't be in Liberia or in another country and get TPS. So you have to come here to get TPS. So anyways, just to move the conversation forward and shorten it as much as possible. So Liberians enjoyed the TPS. TPS was then changed during the Clinton administration, and then the Bush, George H.W. Bush, or George W. Bush, not H.W., but W. Bush, and then Obama, and now to Trump. So just simplistically, what happened was that, if you remember back in 2005, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf ran for elections. I think that's when she got elected, and she was inaugurated in 2006. I know Dennis and Danielle, both of you correct me. So at that time, because you remember now, TPS is given to people who are fleeing war, natural disaster, difficult type situation. So as the word, as it implies in the word, temporary. So it is a temporary status, right? And then after your situation get better, and then what needs to happen is then you go back home. But the Liberians have been on, because we have an on again, off again, civil conflict. And when Ellen Johnson Sirleaf took over, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf effectively made the case that, look, we know that Liberians have been on this. You've granted our citizens this temporary permission to be in the U.S. where they can work and go to school and and participate in the economic and civic life of the country. But Liberia does not have the capacity to receive all of these hundreds of Liberians who are now on TPS in the U.S. So Ellen Johnson Sirleaf made the case to George W. Bush, who then bought it and embraced it. So okay, we'll keep them here. So they kept extending it. So because by statute, TPS was over, and based on the conditions on the ground. So it's evaluated based on the conditions on the ground. And as you know, the Bush administration and the U.S. government pumped in a lot of money and did a lot of things to bring peace to Liberia. So they was like, okay, we brought peace. We don't. It's a fragile peace. We don't want to have to send these people back to Liberia. So the government bought Ellen Johnson Sirleaf administration's argument, which was a sound argument, that the system was so fragile. So then we said, well, okay, we understand your system is still fragile, but so we're not going to keep them sort of in this a temporary, which was a legal status to keep them temporary. So, but we're not going to send them back home now, you know, because we don't want to overwhelm the system and destroy what we've built together. So then they created this other category, which is called, which is a presidential, you know, an executive order. It's controlled by the president, and it's called. So instead of you guys being sent back home because your TPS is over, because, you know, we have peace in Liberia, we defer your departure, we defer your deportation. So that's what that DED means. So say, okay, we defer it for now. Give you some time to gather your things and, you know, to see if you have an opportunity to readjust your status. So George Bush then defer it. What's his name? Obama deferred it, you know, kept giving extension. So, okay, you know, because the argument will still be made, okay, just a little bit more time. Okay, so Trump came along and said, okay, no, you know, it's been deferred all this time. If you all needed to fix this, you know, to create some sort of permanent status for these folks, it should have been done during the Obama administration. Obama, you know, extended it for, I think, 18 months or something, but it extended it 2 different times. And so Trump then ended it. And so part of what the case we've been making was say, okay, we understand that folks have been here for 28 years and all this time in a temporary type situation. But these are people who have not been here a long time, over a generation, because 28 years is more than a generation. Okay, they have families here, they build homes here, they pay taxes here, you know. So, you know, to do the humanitarian thing will be to adjust their status and give them a permanent, you know, give them permanent residency, and then create some sort of pathway for citizenship for these people. So that's the argument that we are trying to make now. DED is exclusive to Liberians. So only Liberians are on DED. There's no other people who are on a DED. Now, there were some Liberians who came here on temporary protected status as a result of Ebola. That was canceled, okay? That has been, it was canceled in 2017. So there's no longer anyone with TPS from Liberia. So the only folks who are in the sort of temporary situation, there may be people here who were once on TPS, Ebola, TPS as a result of Ebola. They still may be in the country, but that category, that Ebola TPS has been canceled. It doesn't exist anymore. So what exists now is people on DED, so a holdover from the other folks who are on, you know, TPS, you know, that was extended, and that now the DED can only be changed by the president through executive order. So it's not TPS is controlled and is managed by the Department of Homeland Security. DED is not a status, it's an order. TPS is a status, DED is an order. It's an executive order controlled by the president. So only Donald Trump can change it. So what we're trying to do is to make the case, the humanitarian case, and say, look, you know, these people have been here for a very long time. They have kids here. They contribute significantly to the economy. So just give them a pathway to citizenship. They're not responsible for why when you after 5 or 6 years, you know, having been here, that you didn't end this stuff. They have stayed here all this time now. Many of them don't even have any connection to Liberia anymore. So sending them back home is not going to be the right thing to do. So that's the argument that we're trying to make. And that's, you know, and of course, we're pressed against time because the deadline is in March 31st. If no legislative solution is put forth, these Liberians who are holders of DED may well have to go back home.
And that's where you guys come in. That's when you with an organization is deciding to go to DC, right? Councilman Russell?
Yeah, so another piece, so part of what we are doing, so because the numbers that we've received with people on DED, the numbers we have about 7,000 Liberians who are on DED. So if you look at the whole immigration debate in the country, in the US, 7,000 is a very small number. Yeah, Liberia is a small country, a small group of people, but you know, it's 7,000 is significant. If that's your mother, is your father, or brother, or any relative. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, relative to immigration, it's a small number. So the approach that we have taken is that we have decided to work with other groups, other big groups, to see how best we can let their connection to the government to see how, you know, to pass a comprehensive immigration bill that will create a pathway
Seems we may have
we're trying to take.
Seems like we, Councilman Russell, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry, your screen froze for about 10 seconds.
Oh, okay. So what I was trying to tell you all was to explain the strategy that we're trying to use that Mayor Collins briefly alluded to. And that is that because we have such small numbers, and you have, for example, you have about 400,000 plus people from Honduras, and 200,000 from Haiti, and 7,000 from El Salvador. You know, so you have these big numbers. We have only about 7,000 throughout the country, people on DED. So as you know, I mean, it's a numbers game at the end of the day. Then of course you have 800,000 people who are on DACA. So all of these issues are being debated. So in order to gain some traction, so the strategy that we are employing is that how do we again, like
include DED?
Huh?
No, how do we include DED in the conversation?
Exactly. So how do we include DED in the conversation? That is the key, because we don't have the wherewithal, the financial wherewithal. We as a Liberian people, I mean, with all due respect, EULA doesn't have the wherewithal, or the resources, or the net, or the connection to do anything. So the approach that we have been able to do is to build relationships and alliances with big organizations. So February 10th to the 13th, we're going with the National TPS Alliance, working with the National TPS Alliance. That includes people from Haiti, the 200,000 plus people who are TPS from Haiti, people from El Salvador, from South Sudan, from Yemen, from El Salvador, from 7 different countries, huge numbers of people. These people have resources, they have the connection, so let's work with them. And we can use the Liberian saying that says, you know, true crab, coffee, drink water. So if DACA passes, or if TPS passes, then we will get the DED, those who are on DED will get the benefit. But DED on its own, because as I told you all before, DED is exclusive to Liberians, only Liberians, and we're about 7,000 on it in the entire country. That's a very small number compared to 400,000, 800,000, all of that. But if the legislative fix is found, you know, we can benefit. So from the 10th to the 13th of February, we're going to Washington, D.C. with our coalition partners, Liberian organizations, but big name organizations from around the country will be assembling in D.C. We're going to lobby the different congressional, folks to see how we can, include DED to any bill that is passed for TPS or DACA.
Right. So what are you expecting from ordinary Liberians here in the U.S. and also government of Liberia, or whatever? What are you expecting us to do now to help that cause? Yeah, Collins, you can pick that up if Russell is frozen.
Well, at this time, they will have to start to prevail on the various senators and representatives. They can start writing those letters. They can start making those calls, you know. And that's why, you see, this is why we need to be in the forefront of leadership and local leadership now. We need to start stepping up. We tend to want to step up only when it's starting to affect us, which is so wrong. We should start doing this thing from day one. Start putting, for people in Minnesota, Rhode Island, all those places with high Liberian concentration, they need to start stepping up and not only doing it when we're in trouble. And we can start doing that right now by start writing those letters to our congressional delegates, to our senators, representatives, and everybody, and explaining to them, we've been here way too long for us to be affected this way. So in a nutshell, that's how we, the ordinary Liberian, can start helping themselves by writing those letters and getting involved in the various communities. Like I always talk about, we need to get out of our comfort zone. We need to start getting involved in various things, in various activities that are in our communities. We are in our cocoon. We tend to be comfortable. We stay there. No, we can't any longer. We need to get out.
So Dennis asked about what some of us here can do. Is there anything that the government of Liberia can do, or any of its entities, like the embassy, for example? Is there anything they can do to help?
Like what Councilman Russell said, March is right around the corner. The government of Liberia can prevail upon the government of the U.S., but the government of Liberia is standing and twiddling her thumb. She can't. People, if you send 7,000 Liberians into Liberia right now, 7,000 Liberians will overwhelm that system. So this government needs to start interacting with, Liberian government needs to start interacting with with the American government. The Liberian embassy needs to start interacting with the embassy. And it's time that they say, okay, we are a sovereign nation. Let's behave like one. Let's start interacting with our counterpart. Our citizens are at stake. They can't sit down and wait for something like that to happen. It will be detrimental to the community. I mean, to Monrovia, because I'm certain almost all 7,000 will hit Monrovia.
You're right. Dr.
They will overwhelm the various systems there.
Dr. Barton Kula is adding to that. He said Liberians need to take part in the political process as a group, give to campaigns, take part in Republican and Democratic parties.
He is right. I've always said that. It's time we get involved.
And so, Mayor Collins, you talk about the small percentage of the population in Helena that is colored, and Councilman Russell, you also talk about the small population in Brooklyn Park that is of Liberian descent. How would you say championing the DED issue will affect you in terms of your citizens' outlook?
Well, you see, with what Councilman Russell said, we partner with others, because it's not only about Liberians anymore. Am I being heard?
Yes.
Oh, it's not only about Liberians anymore. It's about more than just Liberians. But the others have the platform. They have they're involved. So they're out there. What are we doing? We're not. So because we're not involved, we need to piggyback, as they say, we need to piggyback on the others, with others, to make our voices heard. And that's where Councilman Russell and the others come in, by us moving over to DC to get our voices heard, to be a part of the solution.
All right.
So, I'm sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
No, I think, Ms. you go ahead.
Okay, so worst comes to worst. Is there any plan B, C, or D? Any other plans? If should March come and President Trump doesn't extend the deadline, is there another plan?
The only plan here is the government will have to step up. If President Trump doesn't extend the deadline and our government does not put forward, Liberians will have to go back. And then maybe the government will take a drastic measure and say, I'm not accepting those people, so you send them back to where they're coming from. But other than that, the government has to step up. We have to hold our government accountable.
Do any of you know of anyone in America reaching out to the government to ask for their help or to let them know what they can do to help? Has anyone reached out to the government of Liberia at all?
And that's what I hear what you're saying. Mm-hmm. But should we have to reach out? The government is aware of the plight of Liberians here in this country. That's why we have representatives of the government in various countries to see to it that the citizens are treated with respect and dignity. So we should not be reaching out to the government. The government should already know because they have representatives in this country. And that's where, like I said, the demarcation of the system, because you have a representative in Minneapolis. You have, Mr. George, right?
Yeah, Jackson George.
Yeah, Mr. George is the direct representative from the Liberian government. So he should have been in touch with the Liberian government about the plight of Liberians here. So reaching out to the government of Liberia should be a non-issue.
Mr. Russell, you are there with Jackson George.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. First, let me announce on your show that if anyone who is listening to this broadcast know of a Liberian who is a holder of DED, please, they can contact you or Danielle, and you all can send me that information. If they have the time, the availability to join us in Washington, D.C. on February 10th to the 13th. But there must be a DED holder. There must be a holder of DED, because one of the things that we're having, one of the problems that we've been having, and it's just now, just not now, but a long time ago, has been around people who are affected. They don't usually show up.
Right.
The issue has been so stigmatized, and so people don't show up. And I can understand that. I can appreciate why some people may not want to show up because of the stigma that may be attached to it. I don't know. But what happens is that when we go to lobby and we go to seek assistance, a lot of the folks we talk to, they want to see the people who are directly affected. They don't necessarily want to see me or Mayor Collins or Council General Jackson George. They want to see the people who are directly affected. And these people they don't show up. Many of the advocates and the activists you see there, many of them have their papers. Many of them are citizens. Mm-hmm. But in order for this stuff to be meaningful and have some teeth to it, the people who are on DED need to show up. When you go to a congressman's office, the FBI is not going to be standing there waiting for you to arrest you. Nobody's going to arrest you. In fact, DED is a very legal status, not status, but a very legal order that the people are on. So nobody's there looking for you. I think Mayor Collins referenced this a while ago. We have co-equal branches of government here. So if you're there, visiting a senator from the legislative branch, the the judiciary, or the executive branch is not going to send somebody in there. It doesn't work that way. Just trying to sort of minimize some of the fears that some people have. I don't know what is behind the fear, but the only thing I think of is stigma. So if you know of anyone, and so please, if you can get this message out for to them, we will provide them transportation wherever they are in the country, in the U.S. We provide the transportation. We pay for their plane ticket, their hotel, their food, their local ground transportation. We pay for everything to take them to Washington, D.C. anytime between February 10th to the 13th. So if you can give me, that information, you can send it to the inbox or email it to me. I will ensure that they get to DC, during that period, so they can help, because the folks want the senators and all these folks to see you. They want to come and hear your stories. We trying to tell their story, but they have to be at the forefront in trying to tell their stories too as well.
Councilman, there's a question that keeps coming up about TPS. I know you explained earlier. Someone is Donzo is saying there are still Liberians on TPS and some that are asylee. So the question is, why are you only stressing DED and not TPS and those are asylum seekers?
Well, the truth of the matter is that asylees are in a completely different category. Okay, they're in a completely different category. And depending on what, if they're asylee, then they should be fine. If they receive political asylum and all of that, they should be fine. There's really no issue with them. If they apply for political asylum pending, adjudication and all of that, they're still pretty fine, because the system is backlogged. So until that time, they're fine. DED is a much more critical and serious issue, because a deadline is March the 31st. Come March 1st, if nothing happens, that's it. There are, as far as I know, and I stand corrected, but as far as I know, there are no Liberians currently in the U.S. who are on TPS. There are some Liberians who are on DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival on DACA, but there are no Liberians on TPS as far as I know. Liberians who are on TPS, but as I explained to you, the Ebola TPS, and that has been canceled. Some of those people are still in the country. And if a comprehensive immigration bill is passed, whether it's through DACA or the TPS, those people, and so one of the things that we are pushing or we're advocating for is that those people who had the TPS canceled, who are on the Ebola TPS, they may get some reprieve if a comprehensive immigration bill goes through. But there are no Liberians on TPS as far as I know. So that's the situation there now. Let me go back to what we were talking about earlier with Jackson George. Jackson George, we've invited Jackson George, the Consul General in Minnesota, where majority of these people live, by the way. Jackson George we invited him to come to the Brooklyn Park City Council meeting tomorrow at 7 p.m. To make a case to us as to how we at the City Council, can help. We in Brooklyn Park, at the City Council level, how we can help. So he will be making a statement tomorrow. So I encourage you and all of your listeners and viewers to tune in, because we'll be live streaming the event. So it will be live streamed, so people can watch that and hear what Jackson George would have to say coming from the government of Liberia. For us in the city of Brooklyn Park, it is critically important because, like I said, we have the largest concentration of Liberians outside Liberia. They're all living in this one spot. They live in Brooklyn Park. Many of them are on DED. Liberians spent $157 million in the economy in Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center. We are responsible for pretty close to 3,000 plus healthcare jobs in Minnesota. Liberians in Minnesota dominate our healthcare industry. So we will be directly impacted as a city.
Exactly.
The largest minority group at the school district, one of the largest school districts that serve Brooklyn Park, the largest group there is Liberian. We have about 42 Liberian churches in the area. We have, Liberian schools, we have businesses. So we will be directly impacted. So for us as a city, it's an economic issue. It's a down city. So we are concerned.
Thank you. We just lost Mayor Collins, but we want to draw down the curtains. We were talking about, there was a question on you appearing on radio or television in Liberia. Saros Joe Mangisin has the USA correspondent of KMTV. I'm willing to avail our platform to the Honorable Mayor Collins and Councilman Russell whenever they want to send positive messages to our people. We are almost out of time. I would just want to hear your final thoughts, and then Danielle will come in.
Well, thanks for this opportunity as always, Dennis and Danielle, and for the people behind the scene that we may not be seeing, the engineers and all of the people who helped to make this successful. I'm very grateful and appreciative, but I think this is a worthy service. So, we can talk a little bit of politics here and there. We're all concerned about that, about what's going on in the country. But I think this is a great educational platform, and just having a conversation about lessons learned, about some of the things that we are doing here and how these things can work in Liberia, because ultimately we all would like to go back home and try to improve things. And like both Mayor Collins and I have said, and I will say that again, I'm open, willing, available, ready at any time to contribute, anything that folks would like, but it has to be more than just, can you give us, a used fire truck or ambulance or police vehicle, or, it has to be about how do we make some structural changes to move things and make city governance, a priority, so that the services to our people become sustainable. City governance is a big job, even though it's part-time, but we are working 24/7. People are calling us, they're holding us accountable. And why is my area is not towed? Why you have cars broken down or in my area? Why they were speeding? I mean, you can think of it. We are responsible for it. All of the new businesses that come in, we create jobs, we keep people safe, we keep them healthy. All of those things are city council responsible for them. It's not just the national government. So until we begin to have this sort of structural changes as to the role of city council, I think one of the things is that in Liberia, unfortunately, we don't have a deep appreciation for what the city council does. And I think the reason we don't have a deep appreciation because many people really don't know what, the function of the city government and the importance of the city government. And so I'm willing to have this conversation. I really, really appreciate the passing and the transferring of knowledge here, Dennis and Danielle. And I hope you will keep this up. And please don't hesitate to call them in anytime. If you all want to stream live or some of our city council meetings, you can do that too as well. We can like we've been saying over and over, it's very transparent, it's very open, it's public. So anybody in Liberia, anywhere, you can see how people conduct meetings, and deliberate on these things and issues and all of that. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councilman Russell. We appreciate you taking time from your busy schedule to spend your Sunday evening with us. So we really appreciate that. And I want to highlight a couple of things that Councilman Russell spoke about. And that is, if you know anyone who is on DED and would be willing to travel to Washington, D.C. in February, please write our page or email us, and we'll forward that person to Councilman Russell. As he said, they'll be willing to pay for transportation to getting to DC and their hotel stay accommodations and their meals. And this is important because senators and those who will be helping to lobby our cause want to see people who are affected by this. If they don't see anyone, then they figure it must not be an issue and that those 7,000 people don't mind returning back to Liberia in March. So please reach out to us and we'll definitely forward that information to Councilman Russell. Councilman, thank you again. And we thank Mayor Collins, who is also busy and had another meeting, and so he had to step away. But we want to tell him thank you as well. As always, thanks for joining us. We're here every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And we'll be back again next Sunday, same time. We will be addressing Liberian history, and we'll start way back from before the settlers even arrived to Liberia. So February is Black History Month, and we'll dedicate February to talking about the history of Liberia and just breaking the history down into many time periods, different eras. Okay, so thanks again, Dennis.
Till next time, my name is Dennis Ja. I want to thank you, Danielle, my co-host, and also Mrs. Stephanie Setrol, our guest relations manager, and our product engineer. She works so much behind the scene. Once again, Councilman Russell, want to say thank you very much. Thank you to Mayor Collins and to all our viewers across the globe. We say thank you so much. Good night, and may God richly bless you.